Hi there, good morning. It's Monday, 5th of July 2021. We've got grey clouds and sunshine, so goodness knows what the weather's going to do today. And I'm not too worried if I manage to get out or not. But it's quite a slow start for me this morning. I was up until gone midnight last night. As I chatting to Brett from the Angela Porter's Colouring Book Fans Facebook group until gone 11 o'clock, which was lovely. It does have a knock-on effect the next day. So I'm taking the opportunity this morning to have a slow start. I didn't manage to doze off. I did wake up, sort of like 6 o'clock, feeling groggy but needing to visit the bathroom. And I eventually managed to drift in and out of sleep for a bit longer, so that helped a bit. But I'm really not sure what today will bring in terms of what I'll get done. I do intend to get some inking in of the remaining templates that have been approved or are good to go, to get those done. And then hopefully I'll get some news today about the others I sent off, and there may be comments about things that need changing, or perhaps there's some that are too the same, or there were some suggestions that they'd like included instead of them, or one or two of them, but we'll see. It happens, it's a collaborative process in many ways, and that is an ongoing thing. But hopefully by the end of the week, or at the end of the weekend at the very latest, I should have everything inked in, and then it'll just be deciding which particular templates I get to colour in. So just taking some time this morning just to ease myself into art and just coming around and enjoying the bird song outside. I don't know whether my microphone's picking it up, but they're very raucous this morning again. It may just be that it's just that time of year. It's lovely though. Traffic noise is a bit annoying because it drowns the little tweeters out and the squawkers, the corvids, and that little bit of sunshine, because I do believe there is rain forecast for part of the day at least. Oh, what am I doing? As I don't know if I mentioned in any of my vlogs, I know I recorded a vlog yesterday, but I was so incoherent because I was focusing on drawing insects, and what I wanted to say just wouldn't flow. But I was talking about abstract art and how things have gone full circle with me in some ways, and I certainly blogged about this quite a bit, and about struggles with colour. I made some connections and so on, but I thought it'd be quite nice to do some really abstract patterns, harking back to last summer stuff I did there. So this is De La Rowney Aquafine watercolour paper, which is cellulose, not cotton. It's not my favourite paper to work with for watercolours per se, but I've got a little idea going on in my head that I want to try out, which I've tried here, because this was an earlier version. These are actually patterns taken from a kind of lichen. The one I'm working on is, believe it or not, is from cracked ice. Or ice that's formed in and worn around the edges in a pond or a puddle and has become rounded, and it looks nothing like the original. It's just starting with a shape and building on it and letting it flow. It's the thing I do, but it's abstract. It's not meant to look like anything, even though the patterns have been taken from something. The same here. I've taken the patterns from some lichen, but the colours definitely aren't lichen colours, and I was working with ones I wanted. But these are watercolours here, and they're the Magellos, which you can tell, really bright, intense colours. And things just don't flow easily on this paper. I know people get on with it, I just don't. Over here, these bits here are Inktense pencils, and they're a bit granular on here. Not so much on the one I'm working on at the moment, who knows. It may be the way I put the colour down or the colours I chose. But it's okay, it's fine. Then I thought, I wonder what would happen if I combine them. Let's start with an underpainting of Inktense to get the intensity of colour down, and then try some watercolour over the top just to intensify the colour a little bit, or to add a different shade of colour to it. So with this one, I tried with greys in this area. I don't like that. It could work for some things, but I don't enjoy it. Here is just straight Inktense. No, it's not, I lie. The little one there is just straight Inktense. But this one and this one have had a fairly lightish wash of browns. There's a reddy brown here. I can't remember the names of them. And yeah, I think it is red brown or red earth. And this one is burnt sienna, I think, over the top of this baked earth colour. And it actually works quite nicely. The Inktense seems to help the paint on top move a lot nicer and not be so sticky to the paper. So this is a way forward. Perhaps because I've got this paper and I'd like to use it up. These are just swatches trying to work out which colouring Inktense pencils I want to use on this. So let me move that one out the way a mo. There we go. And so I've done a pencil drawing here, because my hope is that I will be able to lighten the pencil up afterwards. I can't remember whether I can with Inktense, but I'm just adding colour where I want the colour to be more intense, and fading it out. And then I can decide whether I use other Inktense pencils to change, add colour to it, or to the sections, or whatever. And sections, the different sections, yeah, sections, that's the word I'm looking for. The different sections of this, and just to see what happens, or whether I use watercolours or something else, because I do have a lot of media in my stash. I had toyed with the idea of doing using distress inks as a coloured background and then adding colour on the top, so that would work best with well, monochrome, I guess, more than anything else, because then the distress ink wouldn't necessarily muddy up or murky up the colours underneath. But it does depend. Distress ink is a funny thing, because it can look fairly intense on paper, but when you add colour and mix it with other colours, it can practically disappear, especially if you use something that's a fairly neutral, well, that is sympathetic with the colour palette. So I could have used something like tea dye, or perhaps even rusty hinge or old paper on the background here, and it wouldn't have an adverse effect with the colours I'm adding. There we go. And I am using a water brush. I quite like these particular ones. They're Caran d'Ache, and I'm not paid or sponsored for any product I mention. I always make a note of that in the description of my videos. You know, paid, sponsored, gifted, product. I just, you know, mention things, and things that work for me and how I like to work, or what I'm experimenting with at any particular time, because that is what I do a lot still. Because I'm still, you know, I'm forever trying to find my way and just see what happens. do like this baked earth. It does remind me of almost a rusty colour, and I haven't got red oxide actually as part of my palette, because there is an Inktense pencil or colour called red oxide, and it is quite a rusty red, whereas this is more that the browny colours you get. Left that, oh no, it's still going to move, it hasn't dried. That'll work ish. So even though that there is, yeah, that'll do. So let me have a quick scout through them for that. And, if I can find it hopefully quickly. There's no guarantee I will, mind. Because Inktenses are great, but trying to work out which colour they are from the top. Is that it? That's the one. And I'm going to have to put a lamp on here, excuse me a moment, because it's suddenly gone quite dark outside. So this one here is the red oxide. And already you can see it's quite a bit darker just by me putting it on dry. It's a much reddier colour, which I like as well. And with indigo blue and some purples, you get that feeling of rust, I think. And that may be the colourway that the colour palette that I go with. And get some rusty colours going. Yeah, patterns taken from ice, but today feels like a rusty day. It's really odd I'm doing this, because up until I really did started doing all of these vlogs almost daily, Monday would always be Mandala Monday, and I haven't created a mandala for a while except as a colouring template for the Angela Porter's Colouring Book Fans Facebook group. So that's interesting. I actually don't think I haven't done a mandala for the Whimsical Cats book either, because I'd normally include one or two mandala style designs in a colouring book, but not this time. Like, the fact I've gone over the line there is not a problem or an issue, because they're just guidelines and I can adapt as need be. So yesterday was a funny old day. I seemed to have a lot of meetings on Zoom yesterday, and I had something at lunch. I had my lunch, something I had really upset my stomach. So the end, you know, sort of late afternoon, I wasn't feeling well, so I crawled into my bed, as I do. If I'm not well, I end up in bed, and I did fall asleep, and I woke up and had to dash to the bathroom. And one meeting I had last night, I had to make an apology while I was talking, so I'm sorry, got to dash to the bathroom, and that was the last dash then. Seemed to have settled down, so whatever had upset me, I know too much information, it worked its way through, thank goodness. And I feel okay today, but, you know, I'm going to be careful what I eat and think carefully about this, because I really don't know what it was. It's one of those things. But I was fine up until I had lunch, so something wasn't right in excuse me, something wasn't right in lunch. I think if it'd been breakfast, it, you know, would have reacted a lot sooner. Anyway, I'm wittering as I do. So I just wanted to try something like this. It's going to take me quite a while to do this. And whether I go in and add patterns with pen pencil or other media. I don't know yet. I'm just going to wait and see how this grows and develops. Because I can, I think, more than anything. And this isn't always everybody's cup of tea. And what I end up with could be a right pig series, especially as I've already said I don't particularly like this paper. It works, but it's not the one I really like to work on best. But it is smooth, it's in the stash, and rather than me using my more expensive papers to practice on, try ideas out on, I think I'd prefer to use this and keep the more expensive ones for, right, yeah, I like that. And this may be a case of, right, I'm going to get so far, I'm going to decide if I like it and then take it from there, because I do things like that as well. So I was talking with Brett last night. We're talking about how people, I do this where I'll start something and I don't finish it. I move on to something new. And I think that is one of my things with art, is that I will start something and I get so far and I think, right, I've done what I need to do with that, and just leave it to one side. Or I decide I'm going to put it to one side until I decide whether I like what I've done and what to do, and I rarely ever go back to them. Sometimes I get overwhelmed by the task at hand, which is why I like smaller projects, I think. The argument could be that, well, you could use bigger paper and draw your design much bigger. But this is the size I like to work at. So, somebody's having their Tesco delivery. Tesco's is a supermarket chain over here. No, I thought they were, but perhaps not. There was a lorry reversing, hasn't come up the street, but maybe it will. Anyway, so about this, and I had a chatting with Brett, because I'm sure she won't mind me saying, finding it hard that, she's doing colouring templates and not finishing them. But she's enjoying playing with colour and trying different colours out, because she's trying out digital colouring. And she's enjoying that process, but was getting hung up on the fact she's got these templates she hasn't finished. And I said, who's saying that you have to finish them? If the process that you're doing you are enjoying, and you're finding it fun, it makes you happy, or you feel happy and content while you're doing it, then isn't that enough in itself? And your colour choices, you're fretting about your colour choices in some ways. If you like them, that's fine. You're colouring for yourself, not for other people. And it was interesting because it carried on from a chat I had with myself yesterday, both on the vlog I recorded, but I didn't keep the voiceover in because it was so disjointed. On the voiceover, the voice, speech. So I just created a time lapse with music instead. But I did take what I talked about and wrote about it on my blog yesterday. And it carried on from there, because I talked about how I get bogged down in my colour choices. I really do. And I know that it's, if I can work with limited palettes or monochrome, then I seem to feel a lot happier about my work than if I'm you know, if I just give myself the whole sandbox of all the possible colours that you have when working digitally, or all the possible colours in a set of watercolours or Inktense pencils or whatever media I happen to be focusing on using at any given time. And then I can have too much choice. I have an idea of what colours I like, or the colours I'd like to use at a particular time. Today, it is these lovely earthy tones, and I seem to be veering towards earthier, more vintage colours, though I still do use very bright colours on colouring templates because they're fun, and a lot of my templates are whimsical and cute and not very realistic, and these very bright colours work nicely with them. And so, you know, it's not about what colours work together and creating a cohesive whole, because the fact of using bright colours with a very cute and whimsical and stylised design, you know, that's great, that's fine. But the idea of using a lovely simplified colour palette, of taking away the stresses and worries of choosing colours, working with colours, of setting an elegance of limits, as those who created Zentangle say, means that I can enjoy the process far more and stress out far less about messing up my colour choices. And of course, I was writing about this yesterday and writing about abstract art, and how I've actually got 3 oil paintings around on the walls close to where I'm working now that I did nearly 20 years ago when I did A-level AS and A-level art. And I can't remember if, I think I did them for my A-level art. I don't think it was for my AS, it might have been. And they are abstract patterns, or patterns abstracted from. 2 are from sort of like steam and diesel locomotive parts, rusty bits. Yeah, there's a pattern here, but they're not rusty in colour. And the other one was Romanesque sculpture. And I was encouraged to try oil paints, and I don't like oil paints, they're slimy and they take forever to dry, and you know, varnish them to give them a bit of a sheen, but otherwise they're quite dull, and well, it just didn't work for me. And that's fine. It's not something I ever want to go back to. It's not something I'm ever going to try again particularly. But you know, I can say I've tried, and I don't like the same as acrylics. I'm not at all fussed on acrylics. Again, they're slimy, and I find them quite, I don't enjoy working with them. That's just my personal, you know, experience. They just don't like them. You know, if I could only choose one medium to work with, if I had no, you know, apart from pen and paper or pencil and paper, those, it would be digital media, I think. But you know, in traditional media, I just still haven't found really what it is that can work for me and work well for me, or that I can make sing those particular mediums that will sing for me in my work. And this I can see here, where the Inktense pencils just haven't flowed with the water nicely, haven't smoothed out. So I'm going to have to work with that. If I was working digitally, I could alter that and make it, you know, what it was, which I think is part of, I'm getting a bit away from things. I'll go back to the oil paintings now. But I think that's why traditional media is good for me, because it's not so easy to get things perfect, and it's having to learn to live with and to work with the imperfections that result. And I can, you know, easily give up when something's not as perfect as I would like it to be. I've got a lot better over the years. And here, I really am not happy with this section, how this colour, how that colour fades out so quickly. Have I got the right one here? No. There. This one is Madder Brown. So let's have a look, because I can pick some of the colour up from the pencil tip and perhaps that will help me. Get a better fade from that very dark area. So whether that'll make it better or make it worse, mind, but it's I have to learn to work with things as they are, and that's a good thing for me, because that perfectionist is still there, the hyper perfectionist. But I'm learning to, I know what I should do. Talking, not thinking. It's about having intense colour in one area and then still carrying a little bit of the colour on down to the lighter areas, so there's some ink tints there. So it's adding this as a gradation, I suppose. So yeah, so I think that's why I keep working with these, in the hope that I'll either find that magic way of working or a medium that really just does work for me as I'd like it to, or the combination of paper and medium that means the medium works well. But going back to these oil paintings, so so they were patterns that were abstracted from these things. So worm screws from a steam locomotive, and sort of like gear discs or something like that from a diesel locomotive, and then Romanesque sculpture, and it was from an angel at can't remember the name of the place, but it was a church with a ruined abbey that I stopped up on the way to Cricklade. May come back to me, but beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sculptures, carvings, and I used the patterns from the folds. I couldn't stay there and draw. It was late in the afternoon, winter afternoon, sort of like late January, so it was getting dark at about 4 o'clock, freezing cold. So I did take some photographs and bought some postcards and things to use as reference. And but the folds, as they were carved in the robes, were just so lovely, the way they fell. So I chose that to base the patterns on. And of course I worked with light and dark to bring out a sense of volume to the patterns in all of them. So contrast, very much so, from white in the case, right to a deep blue in the case of the Romanesque, one based on Romanesque, and the other ones were from a really bright yellow through orange, red, right down to a rich magenta with hints of purple. And they just were colours that went with the subject matter for me. So steam locomotives, fire, hot, powerful, hence the yellows to reds. Same with diesel, the diesel locomotive parts. Not that there's fire that you can see in a diesel locomotive, but it's still the internal combustion engine that is there, the diesel engine that they use. Certainly is fire there, and smoke can come out of them, especially if they are older or just started up and things. In fact, amongst the diesel bashers community, the ones who love diesel locomotives, if a diesel locomotive comes along with loads of steam coming, not steam, but smoke coming out of its exhausts, or when it starts and they rev it up to move it off the platform or whatever, and billowing clouds come out. cries of "my lords, that's dreadful" comes out. And it doesn't mean it's dreadful in terms of awful, it means they use it to mean, gosh, that's brilliant. I don't understand them. But anyway, that's from my time involved in heritage railways. Interesting people. And I mean that nicely, mostly. But so that seemed the logical thing. And for the Romanesque architecture, I always get a sense of peace and calm and tranquility when I visit churches and abbeys like that. I'm not religious in any kind of way, shape or form, but I do have an interest in medieval society, particularly the influence of religion on society in many ways, but more it's the architecture and so on. And you have to understand a bit of the religion to understand why churches were designed in this way and what role they played in society in a wide level. I'm no expert, and I've most probably forgotten more than I knew at one time. But I still pick up that sense of peace and tranquility in places, and I can sit in there as long as it's fairly warm or I'm wrapped up well on a cold day and just soak that atmosphere up. And so blues from, the sort of blue colour of a sunny sky fading to the dark, almost purple blue of nighttime, were colours that just needed to be done then. White, the purity of white as well for the highlights. So tranquility, peace, meditation, inward looking, that kind of serenity, inward looking, inward reflection. So colours, I didn't think this out, I just went with what colours I felt needed to go there. It's only, after I've done this. So at this exhibition, I was absolutely amazed that people kept going up to these paintings and touching them. And I couldn't understand why people wanted to touch them. I had no problem with people touching them. They couldn't damage it. They'd been varnished and framed and so on, so there was no way anybody could damage it, or them, the three of them. And I couldn't understand why. I really couldn't. So a friend of mine had come to the exhibition to see my work. She'd been very supportive and had, followed me on my journey, as it was, to get there, to this point. And so I said to her, "Why did you touch those paintings?" And she said, "Well, she said, I couldn't tell." She said, "I thought they were textured, three-dimensional." I said, "What?" She said, I can't believe they're flat. I thought you had moulded stuff on the top of them to create that." I said, "Oh." And once she'd explained to me what she could see and what other people had obviously seen, I could see that too, that high contrast between the lighter parts and the darkest parts in shadow had created that illusion of volume. And because I'd worked so closely on it, I just didn't realise this myself. I knew that I wanted to get the highlights on the folds and the Romanesque one and the dark with the shadows, but I also knew that I exaggerated it. So, but because I'd worked it, painted it, created it, I didn't realise how intense that contrast was and the effect it had on people who were looking at it with fresh eyes. And that is a feature, that contrast between light and shadow has been a feature of my artwork for, well, time I started looking at things for A-level art, starting to study work and working with it. a lot of this, the art course and being involved in the art so much also introduced me to artists that I'd never really come across before. I've been to art galleries, looked at art and gone, yeah, quite like that, yeah. You know, fallen in love with the Impressionists and Turner and some others that I'd seen. Not so fussed on the old masters, you know, yeah, brilliant talent, yeah, really good, well done. Very accurate, but yeah, okay. Not my kind of thing. Portraits really aren't generally anyway. I think we're all different in what we find fascinating. And wouldn't it be a boring world if we were all the same? So and of course, one of the schools of art or types of art I was introduced to was Cubism. Did some exercises based on the early Cubists where, you know, you'd look at an object from all different directions and draw a part of it in a square grid and then join the parts up with imaginary lines and create an image as if it was, you know, it's all everything, you know, all aspects, all directions that you can look at an object in, from close up, far away, from different angles, front, back, sides, bottom, top, and you know, a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional object. That was interesting. And then you know, one of the study pieces was a piece of art by Picasso, you know, involving violins or a violin. And, you know, there was an exercise to have a go at trying some of the techniques he might have used or the way that we could replicate those to create something similar but not the same, you know, still a personal response. And that was fun. That was interesting because I never really understood what Cubism was trying to do. Even though I might have read about it or been told about it, it just didn't make sense until I did it. And then it made sense. And although it's not really my entire kind of thing, I appreciate Cubist art a lot more because of that. But some of the other artists we were introduced to were Braque and Wang Gri. And Wang Gri was one that I really, really fell in love with, particularly his collages. And they were just beautiful, and the use of non-representational colours in his work as well. And that appealed to me. And here's me, often talking about how I struggle with colours that are real and making things look as I can see them with my eyes. And yesterday it was, oh, good grief, Angela, why have you gone down this rabbit hole? And it's the combination of talking about it. I've got a book of exercises for abstract arts that I picked up a couple of days ago. I wasn't thinking about all of this. It just appealed to me. It popped up in my Amazon suggestions and I thought, oh, I'll have a look at that, see what's going on here. And suddenly everything kind of made sense. And things are beginning to get Smudge the pencil everywhere at the moment, but that's fine. Can live with that. So things are beginning to slot together. So this is why I'm working here today on something that's quite abstract. I did insects yesterday, half insects, and yet I did scan them in, and yes, I have inked them all in, so they've got two sides now. There's no semi-dissected insects on my computer at the moment. Well, there are. The scanned in image is still there, but I've got a sheet of very stylized insects and one I've taken and I've actually started to add colour, and because I've drawn it, I can't remember what colours it was in reality. I'm going with this, right, what colours would I like it to be? So I'm using sort of like limey greens and turquoise at the moment, and a grey grungy background, because I like to work on a coloured background. That is, something that I do enjoy. I'm not here. I said I could have, and in hindsight perhaps that would have been a good idea, but maybe for another one. Problem with distress inks, I don't know how light fast they are, but that's not a problem when I'm just playing around with stuff, really. Anyway, I'm chopsing on here. So this book, and just dipping into it and reading bits on it, is full of exercises to get you thinking about how you can create abstract art. And as I'm reading through, I'm thinking, gosh, these are things I used to do and used to love to do. And of course, over time, my art has become focused more and more on colouring book and colouring book styles and that entangled style, which is my signature style. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love creating this. But there also comes a time where I need to stop and have a think about what else I can do. And I think I keep circling back to this kind of abstract art. And, if you go back to my blog about a year ago or into August last year, I was experimenting then with watercolours yet again. And I think I bought White Nights and the Phoenix sets and was playing around with them, with drawings and adding ink tints and coloured pencils to the watercolours to intensify the colours I'd got, because I just could not get deep enough colours that would satisfy my need for those contrasts from just watercolours on their own. The Magella Golds are better for that because I can get more colour more colour into the water to give more intense colours. But there's still, I don't know, I'm not sure what's happening or going there. I'm going to have to think about how I mix shadows, tones, or how I mix colours to get this contrast. So pennies were dropping that this is something that I do enjoy doing, and I enjoy taking things from observation and using them to create patterns, which is essentially what I've done here. I've created a pattern from pieces of ice, cracked ice that's cracked in curvy patterns and ways. And I've created an overall pattern which now has, well, perhaps it looks like the earth underneath the ice showing through, or I don't know. But that's the origin of this design. Ice ice floating on top of a shallow puddle where it's cracked and melted around the edges, so you've got not sharp edges but soft rounded ones. Perhaps melting ice would be better term. So it's certainly something, but then when I look at everything I've been doing, things that I've done personally, a lot of my entangled artwork is quite abstract, or very stylized at least. And then when I consider all the drawing I did at the beginning of the year, the end of last year, beginning of this year, which seemed to be very Mayan influenced and very mechanical. Again, that's all very abstract. It's just patterns and things that flow out of my unconscious mind. non-representational. Read into it or think of it what you may think. It's not meant to look like anything, although there may be influences from various things there. Sometimes figures seem to appear and faces and so on, but they were never intentionally designed to be there, which is a source of amusement to me as well, because I don't do faces except when I'm drawing intuitively and they seem to appear, but in a very stylized kind of form. If you ask me to draw a face, oh my goodness. So something goes on inside. So yesterday, it's a day and a time, or it's been a period for me to make all of these connections, and that the idea that I limit myself or I'm harsh on myself, because where I will always tell colorists, and I always, as I did when I was teaching art to students who were just learning and just, overcoming the fear that they couldn't do art, they were no good at art, is that, look, we're not doing science, this is art. There's no colouring police. I am not going to tell you off if you go outside the lines. I'm not going to tell you off if you decide you want a green sky and blue grass. This is fine. It's what you want to make of it. And because we did an awful lot of work with very abstract stuff anyway, that made it a lot easier for them to break these rules that we're told, that the sky is above and the earth is below and the sky is always blue. But it's not today. Well, there's patches of blue, but it's grey and white mostly more grey than white, to be honest. Here where I am in South Wales in the United Kingdom, sort of like the rules we're taught as small children often. The sun is always bright yellow and it's got spikes coming out of it and it's always high up in the sky. Well, the sun isn't always that. Sunset, sunrise, and it's on the horizon, and it can be all kinds of shades of orange, peachy, pinky, red even, depending on the clouds in the sky, the time, atmospheric conditions, how much dust there is in the air, or water vapour. That's why we get such glorious sunrises and sunsets. As a child, you're taught that, the sun's yellow. But it doesn't have to be. And it's learning that, grass is green. But there's lots of different shades of grass. And grass can also be yellow and brown if it's died off and sere or burnt and dry. And there are varieties that are more blue than green. And there's some that are greener, and the spring green is different. It's just learning these things, and who knows? I mean, are we creating art that is representative of Earth? Or is this art that represents perhaps a different planet? Or is it art that is representative of just your own emotions, how you feel about grass, how that particular time and day and where you were evoked memories and emotions in you that you want to record in terms of the art that you create? And I like that idea. I like the idea of using colour that reflects my mood or something that I want to say, perhaps, or to drag whatever it is that's rattling around in my unconscious mind, my subconscious, that needs to be expressed. And it may not make any sense to people in some ways, because it may not be representational of what the art is based on, but it's representational of me. Me, what's going on with me at this time? Today it seems to be earth colours and monochrome. Later today I may be looking for those vibrant lime greens and turquoises as I work with that insect, should I choose to go back to that today. Maybe it'll be soft pinks because I perhaps need a bit of TLC in my day. I need to look after myself in some way to soothe and comfort myself. Colours do have meanings psychologically. A quick Google will give you long lists of what colours mean psychologically, or what they kind of represent in terms of moods, and not just inner moods, but moods that they evoke. So, for example, fast food restaurants are often have colour schemes that are heavily based in reds and oranges that are more orangey red, because red provokes hunger in us. And so they're designed, you know, how many times have you popped into a fast food restaurant just for to pick up a cup of coffee, and you come away with a full meal as well because suddenly you felt hungry, even though you didn't when you first stepped through the doors. And it's using that colour. Interestingly, experiments were done in prison and custody suites, and they found that if the walls were painted a soft pink, that the violence was much reduced. Which is interesting. You don't have to understand the colour theory for it to work, is the point. So, you know, not a bright pink, but just a subtle soft pink, a pastel pink. So colours, they're important to us. I don't know if anybody's ever worked out why colour affects us psychologically. I don't know whether it's just because we start to associate things with certain emotions and feelings, and then those colours evoke those feelings in us. So, for example, you get used to going into a fast food restaurant that's orange when you're hungry. You associate fast food with hunger and perhaps red with hunger. I don't know. I don't know the history of it. It's interesting though. Interesting questions. So anyway, to go back to colour, I'm very good at telling other people, don't worry about what colours you put together, just go for it. And then there's me here, struggling with colours, especially when I'm doing representational drawings. You know, a succulent, because I'll go back to that because that's the recent thing where I've been going, oh no. I'm getting frustrated with myself because the colours that I'm using aren't like the colours I can see. And I want the colours to be like the colours I can see. And it's having to stop and think and go, Angela, are we drawing this as if it's a photograph, or are you giving a personal response? And the answer is, it's a personal response. So why are you getting hung up on colours? It's going back to, I'm drawing a succulent, therefore it must look like the succulent I'm drawing. And the course that I was taking also is suggesting that it is botanical illustration, and so the illustration should be the colour that you want it to be, you know, the colour that it should be, or not should be, that's the wrong words, but the colours that trying to work out what colour I want there. I think I'm going to do I can find it. No, not that one. Is that the one? Victor. So although it's think I've made the realisation I need, what I've been beating around the bush with for ages perhaps, is that although the course is illustration, there's still a lot I can learn from it, even if it means that that's not the thing I'm going to end up doing. Because I think I'm going to have succulents that are colours I would like them to be, but then when you look at succulents and cacti and nature, fungi especially, the range of colours that are there, that no matter what colours you use, there's likely to be one that's something like that. And I think for me, the thing I would want to focus on is light and dark, contrast, volume, that illusion that this is, if you touched it you could almost feel 3D shapes, and that is the way forward, I think, for myself, to be honest, with a lot of work, and realising that, and writing about it as I am now talking about it, so it embeds in my unconscious mind, in my memory, as the pennies have dropped. This is what I'd like to do, because I know I'm always happiest with my work when I choose colours I'd like to work with, where I use limited colour palettes as well, and things just happen to move forward as I'd like them to. So there we are. You can have an overall look. So this paper is a little bit smaller than 5 inches. Oops, off camera. There we are. It's a little smaller than 5 inches square. 5 inches, 6 inches square, and it's the Aquafine smooth paper. So don't like it, and I'm not all that happy with the finish I've got here, but time is marching on. I've been chatting for nearly an hour, and it's nearly 11 o'clock, and I do have some work I need to go and do, which I can do while this is processing and uploading and stuff. And I've got to a point where you can see the shapes I've got there and patterns a bit more clearly. I suspect I'm going to try using watercolour over the top of these colours to change the colour subtly perhaps, and to intensify it, or I'll go back in. Some of them aren't very smooth, but it is what it is. It's trying something out, and it might be the first iteration of a series of things, because this is something I don't do all that often, is I don't work and rework things. I tend to work it, do it, done, move on. And perhaps it's time for me to learn to take something and then to use part of it. It's quite fun actually to do this and then to use a viewfinder to find a smaller area of it and use that to draw it big and then do something else with it and keep on going. Again, these are things I used to do, and then colouring books came on and the focus is on those. So I think I need to draw that not distinct boundary, but look at how I can do things artistically in this kind of way, so that not everything I do is colouring book arts per se, is looking at different ways of working with things. Because I will still be doing colouring books, but I also need to express myself in other ways. I think that makes some sense. So thank you for joining me. It's been nearly an hour, and I will do a time lapse of this one. Hopefully I haven't gone off screen too often. If you've enjoyed, thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. Comments are always welcome. Just keep them nice, pleasant. Don't mind criticism as long as it's done in a nice way. And just be creative, enjoy yourself, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.